Chapter 21 is over North Africa. Go ahead and include these details into your comp book and resume the video when you're finished. Let's take a look at the location of North Africa by viewing the globe. We'll start with the United States, and as we head east across the Atlantic Ocean, we get to North Africa. Now to zoom out a little bit, you can actually see the continent of Africa. And by looking at the topography, Northern Africa is pretty much all desert. It includes the countries of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. And this region stretches from the Atlantic Ocean all the way over to the Red Sea. The largest detail of this region is the Sahara, which is the largest desert in the world. Other geographic features include mountains all across here, the northern Nile River Valley, and the Sinai Peninsula. The Sahara, like I said, is the largest desert in the world. The name comes from an old Arabic word that means desert, so don't say Sahara Desert or else technically you're saying desert desert. The Sahara is so big that nearly all of the contiguous 48 United States would fit into it. Much of these areas have very few people or no people at all. And a lot of the desert is made up of what we call regs, which are broad windswept gravel plains, as you see here in this picture. Some of the desert has sand, but majority of it is going to be dried up gravel beds, with some plateaus and other landforms throughout. The Sahara has two main mountain ranges, the first of which that we'll look at are the Ahaggar Mountains, which are located in the central part of the Sahara. The mountain range runs right across, and as you can see here, their peak reaches just under 10,000 feet. The other major mountain range are the Atlas Mountains, which are located here in the northwestern part of the Sahara. They rise higher than the Ahaggar Mountains, which they rise to about 13,671 feet. And the mountains themselves go through Morocco, Algeria, and parts of Tunisia. The Sahara also includes landforms called depressions, which are low areas of land. Now, the Nile River is the longest river in the world. It empties northwards into the Mediterranean Sea, and it's formed by the union of two rivers, the Blue Nile and the White Nile. The Nile River Valley is like a long oasis in the middle of this desert area. The water from the Nile River irrigates the surrounding farmland, and about 99% of all of Egypt's population lives in the Nile River Valley. Let's go ahead and locate the Nile on the map. Now, since this is mostly desert area, you can see the Nile almost immediately. All you have to do is look for the darker parts running through Egypt. So when the two rivers come together, it forms the main part of the Nile that winds and stretches through countries like Sudan all the way up through Egypt. Here, what you thought was the entire river itself, with that dark color, is actually farmland. In this picture, you can see the river as this thin blue area, but look at all of the fertile farmland that is nearby. Every year, the Nile River floods, and when it floods, all of the silt and sediments at the bottom float upwards to the top and end up on this land. Then when the flooding goes back down, the water goes into the river, but all the silt and sediments are left behind, making the farmland perfect for growing crops. The river flows northwards and empties into the Mediterranean Sea. Before it does so, you have what's called the Nile Delta, and the river starts to branch off into smaller rivers. And as you can see here, lots and lots of farmland surrounds the area. as well as major cities. Just east of the Nile River, you have the Sinai Peninsula, which, as you can see, this peninsula is rather triangular shaped. There are mountains and deserts that cover this peninsula, and in between the peninsula and the rest of Egypt, you have the Suez Canal. Now, the Suez Canal connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Gulf of Suez, which goes into the Red Sea. The canal itself was built by the French in the 1860s, and they built it for good reason. As you can see in the photograph, obviously the Suez Canal is meant for transportation, and it's large enough to have aircraft carriers. Looking at the location of the Suez Canal, earlier I said it connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Gulf of Suez. This was built by hand on purpose, because way back when, if people wanted to travel from the Mediterranean Sea and sail to the Arabian Sea or any other part of Asia, they would have to go through the Mediterranean Sea, through the Strait of Gibraltar, all the way around Africa, all the way up through the Arabian Sea, and then they could get to wherever they wanted. Which, as you can imagine, would cost not only a lot of money, but it would take a lot of time. What they did instead was that they built the Suez Canal so they could travel from the Mediterranean through the canal itself, through the Red Sea, around through the Gulf of Aden, and they could get where they wanted to much quicker and not spend as much money. Now, there are three main climate types found in this region. We have desert, Mediterranean, and steppe. In the desert, temperatures can reach up to 136 degrees Fahrenheit, and at sunset, they can drop very quickly. In some areas, there has been no rain for many years, and sand and dust storms can be very severe. For their resources, they have lots of good soils near the Nile River Valley, and rain or river water also aid with farming. Their main minerals are gold, copper, and silver, and you can find those all throughout the mountains in the Sahara. That's all for the geography of North Africa. We'll discuss more about it in class throughout the week.